Prologue. The winds of March whipped across the historic campus of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Students bustled about, books in hand, dreaming of the upcoming break from classes. But there was an undercurrent of anticipation and electricity flowing through the hallowed grounds. For in this basketball-mad corner of North Carolina, the winds of March carried more significance than just changing seasons. They heralded the arrival of the NCAA tournament, that annual spectacle of upsets, buzzer beaters, and unforgettable drama that captivates the nation. And for the powerhouse Tar Heel program, it represented a chance to etch its name amongst the immortals of the game once again. In the storied halls of the Dean E. Smith Center, head coach Roy Williams could feel it too. The nattily-attired mentor paced the corridors, mentally preparing his team for the journey that lay ahead. He'd been here before, of course, having led teams to multiple Final Fours and championships. But the pursuit of perfection drove him, that insatiable desire to raise another banner to the Chapel Hill rafters. As he made his way to the practice court, Williams stopped to gaze up at the iconic ceiling, with its hidden championship years only revealed in certain light. Soon, perhaps, a new numerical inscription would be added to that cramped space. He steeled himself, running through opponent scouting reports and game plans in his mind. The road would be arduous, but the reward potentially historic. With a deep breath and a trademark slip of his jacket, Williams strode through the doors to greet his players. The 2023 North Carolina Tar Heels were about to embark on their great March odyssey. Chapter 1, The Tar Heels. From warm-up lines to elite recruits to future pro superstars, the 2023 UNC roster featured a compelling cross-section of the teacher's pet program. There were the grizzled, heralded veterans hoping to cement their legacies. The big men with old-school dominance in the NCAA's new pace and space era. The long, bouncy athletes capable of lockdown defense. And of course, a bevy of young, potential one-and-done dynamos dreaming of hearing their names called in the NBA draft's first few picks. Leading the charge was senior point guard and All-American Luke Pritchard. The gritty floor general had been through March battle after March battle, experiencing the agony of tournament exits but also the euphoria of deep runs. His intelligence, defense, and steadying influence would be crucial to any championship quest. Pritchard's running mate was freshman phenom Jason Williams Jr., the latest in a long line of Williams staffers' prized recruits from the fertile basketball grounds of Virginia. Though only 18 years old, J-Dub already possessed a man's game, a deadly mid-range stroke, an ultra-tight handle, and the sort of court vision and savvy that belied his youth. NBA scouts drooled over his potential while Williams appreciated his poise. If he avoided the freshman woes that plagued many a previous UNC prodigy, Williams Jr. could propel this team for an extended run. Inside, North Carolina featured perhaps the most formidable front court in the entire tournament field. Senior Donovan Edwards used his broad 7-foot frame and soft hands to excel on the blocks with deft post moves and put-back buckets. He was joined by junior Emmanuel Richards, the jewel of Williams' vaunted 2020 recruiting class. An ultra-athletic and bouncy 6'10" forward, Richards's combination of strength and agility made him a lockdown defender but also incredibly difficult cover in the paint or on dribble drives. Richards' classmate Ethan Porter brought a different dimension up front as a modern 6'9" stretch 4, capable of running the floor and burying three-pointers. When he was on, Porter made the Heels' offense goggle with its versatility. But he had a tendency to vanish at times, prompting Williams to utter his frequent catchphrase of "This is not a freakin' AAU game." Rounding out the starting five was junior wing Reggie Caldwell, a high-flying 6'6" matchup nightmare. Caldwell's physicality and leaping ability made him a demon on the glass and in transition, with the potential to take over any game with thunderous dunks and acrobatic finishes. If he could gain consistency from beyond the arc, Caldwell could be this UNC squad's X factor. Off the bench, the Tar Heels featured a deep and eclectic mix of role players. From resilient defensive pests to sweet shooting gunners to big-bodied enforcers, Williams had the luxury of tailoring his second unit to any specific game scenario. He just had to figure out the right combinations and the proper allocations of minutes. One major question was at the backup point guard spot behind Pritchard. Would it be spark plug Steven Gomez, all 5'7" of ankle-biting, frenetic energy, or perhaps sharp-shooting sixth man Gabriel DeSoto, with his irresistible scoring pop? The pestering defense of Gomez balanced against DeSoto's shot-making gave Williams plenty of options. Whatever the rotations, Williams knew he had a roster stocked with high-end talent, elite athleticism, scoring punch, and versatility. If the pieces all clicked into place at the right times, this group was capable of making a deep March run and cutting down nets in the final throes of the season. But of course, that was far easier mused than accomplished, as every team in the Big Dance came armed with championship hopes and dreams. There were no guarantees, Williams reminded his squad constantly. Only opportunities to be seized through hard work, focus, and the highest competitive demeanor. Still, as the veteran coach gazed out over his tuned-up team during their final practice before tournament travel, he felt a surge of confidence. This 2023 UNC squad seemed to have that special something, that perfect brew of chemistry and ability. Maybe, just maybe, it was finally time to add a new year to that cramped ceiling in Chapel Hill. Chapter 2, The Opening Rounds. The Tar Heels' NCAA journey began in earnest in the opening round in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. As a 2 seed in the Midwest region, they faced a familiar foe in the 15 Wofford Terriers, the plucky Southern Conference champions. From the opening tip, it was evident UNC was not taking their lower-seeded opponent for granted. The Heels came out playing stifling defense and aggressively crashing the glass, quickly establishing their physical dominance over the smaller Terriers. Offensively, the inside-outside combination of Richards, Edwards, and Porter presented an array of mismatches that Wofford struggled to counter. When Wofford managed to shrink the deficit to single digits, Williams calmly called a timeout. He reminded his players to value each possession on offense while ramping up the pressure on defense to force turnovers. Sure enough, UNC responded with a torrid 18-2 run that effectively ended the competitive phase of the game before halftime. Williams Jr. was spectacular in his NCAA debut, slashing to the hoop and hitting push shots with confident ease. When the frantic Wofford defense overcompensated, he'd calmly dish to Edwards rolling to the rim for authoritative dunks and layups. The young phenom played with veteran poise, instantly injecting belief that he could be this UNC's team's straw that stirs the championship drink. By the time the final buzzer sounded, UNC had cruised to an 87-62 victory, avoiding the dreaded tournament upset drama. As Williams addressed his jubilant squad, he reminded them that this was just the first of many required steps. The real challenges still loomed ahead, where any letdown or lack of intensity would be mercilessly punished. Next up was the formidable 7-seed Utah State in the second round, fresh off an upset of Missouri. The veteran Aggies prided themselves on a rugged, disciplined defensive approach designed to muck up games and frustrate opponents. Could UNC handle the physicality and low-scoring grind? The opening minutes did not provide encouraging signs, as Utah State manhandled the Heels on the glass while permitting few open looks. UNC's outside shooting went ice cold, missing 14 of its first 16 triple tries. The offense looked discombobulated and contemporary, resulting in far too many head-scratching turnovers. Utah State fought their way to a 33-29 halftime lead, smothering UNC's offense with their swarming rotations and aggressive help sides. In the locker room, Williams chided his team for playing selfishly and failing to move the ball effectively against the Aggies' shifting matchup zones. On the defensive end, he implored them to finally start crashing the defensive glass before Utah State's second chances buried them completely. The adjustments worked wonders early in the second half. With superior ball movement to create open looks, UNC regained its shooting stroke. Meanwhile, a more physical and focused effort on the defensive boards eliminated Utah State's extra opportunities. The Tar Heels ripped off a 23-6 run to take firm control of the contest. From there, UNC's depth and talent took over. Williams was able to freely substitute his lineups to keep a steady wave of fresh legs and energy crashing against the wearying Aggies. With each opponent's missed shot, the Heels sprinted out in transition, turning the grinder game into their preferred free-flowing showcase of transition dunks and open threes. Caldwell was a human tornado in the open court, making plays above the rim at both ends. By night's end, an ugly start had transformed into a stress-free 74-62 win and a trip to the Sweet 16. To Williams's delight, his players had been successfully tested with Utah State's physicality, and had turned the tide through disciplined execution rather than trying to match brawn with brawn. Those were promising signs for grindier future matchups that loomed. Chapter 3: A Date in Las Vegas. Vegas, baby. While the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip typically beckon debauchery and adult adventures, the Tar Heels were there strictly on business in late March for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 rounds. Williams firmly enforced his no nightlife rules with his players as they prepared for what he knew would be the tournament's fiercest tests yet in the crucible of the West region. First up was a showdown with the 3-seed and defending national champion, Kansas. The familiar Blue Bloods were led by a strong group of holdovers from last year's title squad, with a few talented new additions sprinkled in. It shaped up as an epic grudge match, with UNC hoping to avenge its championship game loss from a year ago. When the teams took the floor in Vegas's T-Mobile Arena, the atmosphere crackled with intensity. From the opening tip, the game was a ferocious showdown between heavyweights trading blows. Caldwell and Williams Jr. took turns slashing into the lane to draw fouls, while Porter's deft shooting touch countered Kansas's own barrage of triples. Neither team could pull away thanks to their contrasting strengths getting neutralized. When UNC's half-court execution stagnated, the Jayhawks clamped down in their switching man-to-man to force turnovers. And whenever Kansas threatened to go on a run, the Heels bigs dominated the paint and gobbled up crucial offensive rebounds. As the tight affair entered its final frantic minutes, the stage was set for the two veteran point guards to be the final decisive orchestrators. Kansas's senior general probed UNC's defense incessantly, driving hard and kicking to open shooters. Meanwhile, Pritchard calmly settled the Heels in their offensive sets before slicing hard and distributing to open teammates. In the end, Pritchard saved his best for last, draining a step-back triple with 43 seconds left to put UNC ahead 71-69. The Jayhawks' final possession ended with a desperation miss, and the Heels finally advanced after multiple agonizing tourney exits from this stage in previous seasons. The locker room celebration was euphoric, with Williams raising Pritchard's arm in triumph before his players. Memories of last April's heartbreak in New Orleans washed away with the knowledge that their great rivals had been vanquished. But the wily Williams quickly steered his squad back to the present moment and the upcoming regional final just 2 days later. In their path stood the upstart, wildly athletic Memphis Tigers, fresh off an upset over Gonzaga. Boasting a pair of high-flying freakish 6'9" twin towers and a bevy of jet-quick guards, Memphis deployed a chaotic, turnover-fueled attack and ferociously preyed on inattentive opponents. When the Tigers jumped out to an early 10-0 lead by ambushing UNC in transition, it appeared the breakneck pace of the 40-minute track meet would benefit the young, fresher legs. Memphis's get-it-and-go philosophy left little room for UNC's more conventional half-court approach. As the game reached a fever pitch and the Tiger lead stretched into double digits, Williams finally called a timeout to settle his clearly rattled squad. In the huddle, he calmly informed them that they were getting lured into playing Memphis's brand of play. He reminded them of their own identity: move the ball, set screens, be patient, and let their skilled bigs go to work. The reset worked wonders, as UNC immediately slashed the deficit by unleashing Richards's power on the interior. Then Pritchard spearheaded a more disciplined ball control game to put Memphis on its heels and force its defense to work for the first time all night. The longer UNC made the Tigers guard, the more their shots stopped falling and the easier it became for UNC to grab precious defensive rebounds. Once UNC eliminated Memphis's early burst of free transition points, the game reverted into a half-court grinder. Suddenly Williams' veteran group maintained the advantage, with the steady two-man game of Edwards and Richards continually pinning the foul-plagued Tiger bigs. UNC ultimately gritted out a 78-73 triumph. In the aftermath, a visibly drained Williams praised his players' poise and defensive intensity to continually get stops and eliminate Memphis's bet on chaos. Though his team prevailed, he understood they had survived a serious scare that could have derailed title aspirations in an instant. To reach their full potential, these lapses and mental focus slips needed to be eliminated. As the Tar Heels returned to their Vegas hotel, the reality of their Sunday prize fight began to set in. The 1 overall seed UCLA Bruins were waiting in the regional final. The road to the Final Four would require knocking off an opponent that much of the nation considered a juggernaut. For Williams' seasoned group, there could be no bigger test of their championship medal. Chapter 4: The UCLA Showdown. As Roy Williams prepared his players for their collision with UCLA, he knew the pressure was squarely on his veteran group. While the upstart, overachieving Tigers played with freewheeling house money in their underdog role, UNC and UCLA entered the NCAA tournament with legitimate dreams of cutting down the nets. That reality was reflected in the assembly of talent each coaching staff rolled out. UCLA's starting lineup featured 3 probable lottery picks, with the electrifying 6'9" twins Jamal and Jamer Decker headlining a versatile front court and the savvy, jet-heeled lead guard Benny Rhodes orchestrating the up-tempo attack. Add in a few sharpshooters and another bouncy rim protector off the bench, and the Bruins' dominance on both sides of the floor was easy to comprehend. UNC, meanwhile, had its own stable of future pros and diverse weapons, if not quite the same lottery pedigree. Richards and Porter presented matchup quandaries with their respective inside-outside versatility, while the diminutive Williams Jr. was a bundle of energy and shot-making flair. Edwards used his bulk to battle for boards, and Pritchard was UNC's steadying hand at the controls. If the Heels hoped to pull off the upset and survive the West region, Williams knew his group had to fight fire with fire. Getting bogged down in a rock fight favored UCLA's ability to grind opponents down and create open looks through sheer talent. No, UNC had to work to raise the scoreboard totals into the 80s by running at every opportunity and forcing the issue with its waves of bodies. And that's precisely the style the two teams adopted out of the opening tip. With both coaches giving their respective catalyst guards ultimate freedom to push the pace, the early minutes devolved into a heat-checking three-point shootout. Rhodes and UCLA's gunners traded blows with Williams Jr. and Caldwell's forays into the lane to draw fouls. After a blistering opening 10 minutes, the score stood improbably knotted at 29-29. Each coaching staff called for a timeout to preach a measure of more judicious shot selection amidst the early onslaught. Sure enough, the latter half of the first stanza featured more coherent half-court execution, with each side employing switching defenses to muck up the other's flow. Still, whenever a rebound was secured at either end, the horses got running again with numbers galore. As halftime arrived, UCLA clung to a 49-45 edge thanks primarily to their dominance on the offensive glass. The Bruins' bouncy length and rebounding prowess was turning far too many UNC misses into second-chance opportunities, giving them crucial extra possessions to maintain their slim lead. In the locker room, Williams harped on the need for his squad to box out and limit UCLA's offensive rebounds in the second half. He reminded them that winning the battle on the boards was key to controlling the pace of the game and preventing the Bruins from gaining momentum. The Tar Heels came out of the locker room with renewed determination, crashing the glass with ferocity and intensity. Richards and Edwards patrolled the paint, using their size and athleticism to secure rebounds and deny UCLA second-chance points. Meanwhile, Pritchard orchestrated the offense with precision, finding open shooters and attacking the rim with purpose. As the second half wore on, UNC slowly chipped away at UCLA's lead, methodically executing their game plan and imposing their will on both ends of the floor. With each defensive stop and offensive possession, the Tar Heels gained confidence and momentum, while the Bruins struggled to find answers against UNC's relentless pressure. With time winding down and the game hanging in the balance, it was Luke Pritchard who rose to the occasion once again. The senior point guard delivered a masterful performance down the stretch, scoring clutch baskets and making key plays to keep UNC within striking distance. As the final seconds ticked away, UNC found themselves trailing by just 1 point with possession of the ball. With the game on the line, Pritchard drove hard to the basket, drawing the defense and leaving Ethan Porter wide open in the corner. Without hesitation, Porter rose up and drilled the game-winning three-pointer as the buzzer sounded, sending the Tar Heels to the Final Four in dramatic fashion. The celebration that ensued was one of pure joy and elation, as UNC players and fans alike reveled in the thrill of victory and the realization of their championship dreams. For Roy Williams and the Tar Heels, it was a moment they would never forget, a moment that would forever be etched in the annals of NCAA tournament history. Epilogue. As the confetti rained down and the championship trophy was hoisted high into the air, the North Carolina Tar Heels basked in the glory of their hard-fought victory. For head coach Roy Williams, it was a moment of validation and vindication, as he watched his team cut down the nets and cement their place amongst the greatest teams in college basketball history. The journey to the NCAA championship had been long and arduous, filled with ups and downs, trials and tribulations. But through it all, the Tar Heels had remained steadfast in their belief in each other and their commitment to achieving greatness. As they stood on the podium, surrounded by adoring fans and flashing cameras, the North Carolina Tar Heels knew that they had accomplished something truly special. They had defied the odds, overcome adversity, and emerged victorious as champions of the NCAA tournament. And as they celebrated their victory into the night, they knew that their journey was far from over. For the North Carolina Tar Heels, the pursuit of excellence would continue, as they set their sights on even greater heights and the opportunity to etch their names in the annals of basketball immortality once again.